welcome to the panel on AI governance today. I think this is more of a practical round today. My name is Till Klein. I'm working at Applied AI. We're in an initiative down the road, started as part of Unternehmertum, independent in the meantime. Our main goal is to help AI practitioners to bring AI into practice. We have now 120 colleagues from engineering, strategy, education, and so on. And I have the great task to look into operationalizing the AI Act and other guidelines and regulations. So it's a very exciting topic. Let me introduce the panelists today. I'm really happy. So we have Sabine Wiesmüller. She is the director of the AI Competence Center at German Entrepreneurship. She has been previously the co-founder, managing director of the innovation cluster at Bodensee region, and holds a PhD from Zeppelin University about the relational governance of AI forms and interactions. Welcome, Sabine. We have also Philippe Coton. He's the business development lead on AI quality at TÜV Süd. He is a IEEE lead assessor for ethical AI, and previously also worked in the field of industrial maintenance and as an agile coach. Welcome, Philippe. And last but not least, Daniel Weimer. He's the managing director of CERT AI, which is a 100% Munich Re subsidiary. He previously worked on AI at Volkswagen as a head of AI in Volkswagen US, but then also later in Munich on AI in production and engineering. And from the background as in research, as a research fellow and lecturer at Uni Leiden in Belgium and also in Israel. Welcome, Daniel. Good, I'm just gonna join you here as well and take a seat. Maybe just to open and break the ice a little bit. Sabine, so you spend lots of time in practice. Now you're full-time in practice. You also did your PhD, really diving into kind of the academic perspective. And you could have continued the academic pathway, I suppose. What brought you back into a full-time practice role in AI?
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting question. Like for me, I always like to reflect on concepts or also bigger problems like AI, and also trying to grasp the problem itself. Like it's a huge phenomenon. It's happening around the globe. It's very hard to say what exactly is happening and what exactly the concerns are. So I decided to look at it and take the time to really reflect on it scientifically. But I think especially in AI, it's important to also be in practice and work in practice and see it be adopted in practice to really be able to understand what's really going on and not only have the theoretical lenses. So I'm really fortunate and happy to be able to bridge both worlds, really.
Yeah, very exciting, bringing the both perspectives together. Philippe, you're coming in from TÜV Süd, being a certification body, being around for a long time. We see the regulations like the AI Act, but also standards, everything is in full swing. Everything is so dynamic. What do you personally find most exciting about the developments at the moment?
Everything first is exciting currently. But if I have to pick, what I find fascinating is how, at least for once, the Commission of the European has been agile in changing a law when things was happening, when Gen AI was happening, and then changing the law. This was finding fascinating to see it happening before our eyes, to see the lobby work just happening on the public scene, what usually is behind the curtains. I find it fascinating. But when we go into details, we can see really the ball being played between the Council, between the Commission, between the Parliament, and this ball reflects really a lot of aspects of all the civil society. And it's exactly what I find fascinating, what is going to be crystallized out of those three balls, and it's going to define probably a large amount of our society for the next years.
Yeah, it's like an open heart surgery, like it's really good.
Yes,
quite invasive in front of your eyes.
We see it, it's happening now. And I mean, and then we take another example. 2 months ago, there was a new machinery regulation. You raise your hand, you know it? Nobody. And it's impacting all your life as well. It's impacting all if I don't know, factory is going to put waste in the environment or not. But you didn't even know about it. Yeah. the biggest refresh of a regulation in the past 15 years in Europe on the machinery. You don't have a clue, but you all know about this AI regulation because it touches really your very society, your very civil society.
Very exciting times. And Daniel, about your journey perhaps. So as mentioned, you've been a lot at Volkswagen on the hardware side of the industry, working with machines and products. Now you moved more into the soft side in terms of finance, not so much hardware. What motivated you to make that move?
Yeah, for me, it's not really a move of industries. It's more a move how I look into the topic of AI. I started in academia doing research. I worked at Volkswagen doing engineering and operations of AI. During that time, it was clear for me that if this thing ramps up, so if we will scale massively AI systems, then we have to take care of risk in AI systems. And if you want to work on how to quantify risk in AI systems, you automatically end up in the insurance industry, because at some point someone will sell you an insurance to take over the risk in your AI system, and that brought me automatically there. So more kind of from research to engineering to risk management of AI systems, rather than really switching industries.
Yeah. I suppose at Volkswagen, presumably you were confronted a lot with the nitty-gritty risks and user acceptance and so on, and then clearly it's a very sensible next step to, let's say, and quantify that a little bit more.
Yeah, exactly. And when we talk about autonomous driving and stuff like that, everybody is asking for insurance, and nobody jumped onto that topic, or not so many people. So I sort of count me in.
Yeah, fantastic, cool. So the topic of the panel is AI governance. It's a term being talked about quite a bit, but depending on who you talk to, you get different ideas of what that actually means. And so I would like to turn to you, Sabine, having researched this quite a bit. Can you offer a definition perhaps, or try to sketch out for us what is AI governance, and maybe also what is it not?
Yeah, so from my perspective, I can maybe first give you an insight into what we were using as a concept at Zeppelin University, which stems from compliance and a lot of compliance history and research as well. So for us, governance usually has 4 components. So you have a formal component, which would be regulations, everything that makes you liable as a company. Then you have the organizational settings, so processes, structures. Maybe, for example, you would set up a committee or a new department, or a CSR department, for example. And now for AI, you would have someone who's responsible for AI ethics. Then you have a certain ethical component, which doesn't really mean you have to have one perspective or one particular set of values, but more so that you decide to integrate ethics as an element. And the fourth would be that you look into or at the individual really, and try to get them to understand the importance, so awareness, mindset trainings, etc. So those to us would be 4 components that you should have in every compliance or integrity management program. And then all those 4 combined would then allow you, if you are going more into gray zones where maybe you don't really have a regulatory framework already, or also with the AI Act coming up, there will always be a time gap, right? So whenever a new technology will hit the market, it won't immediately be part of the regulation. So therefore, for me, and the perspective that I have is that it's important to have a holistic governance approach, really, that in the meantime, you can still make sure that your company conduct is compliant to what you aim for.
Yeah. Right? But just come back to the basics. So I understand what you described is more like AI governance inside of an organization, as opposed to, and I hear this also sometimes, the enforcement part of the AI Act, for instance, right? So you have the national competent authorities, you have the AI office, and so on. Is that a different type of governance? Do you have a label for us too?
Yeah. So okay, maybe the example I was using now is really rather corporate compliance. So you would look at organizations, it's organizational level, but of course you hear the term as well for global governance. Will we have a global committee for AI or a global jurisdiction of some form, and who would then enforce that? Who would be the body to do so? You also have multilateral governance in a sense that you would have different sectors working together, like the public sector, political institutions, the private sector, civil society as well, how would they work together? So governance to me would always mean the coordination of processes and stakeholders for a certain goal that you commonly agreed upon. That I think could be a definition for governance.
Okay, thank you. So we can just recap. So we have governance inside of organizations. We have also more of a global
among
governance
organizations,
and
yeah, among sectors.
within and among. Okay, and Philippe and TÜV of course is a player for a long time doing certifications, not only in AI, but for, you mentioned machinery, there's medical devices, there's many other things. And TÜV as an entity, as a certification body, basically is one very important actor. From your experience, can you help us to just map the landscape? What other actors matter? You don't need to have a full list, but just top of your head, like who plays a role in the more global governance thing, like as an organization, right?
I will address your question. First, I want to react to what you said.
Oh, please, yes.
And you mentioned you see a gap between when a new technology will come or whatever. And from the point of view of today, I do not really agree, because I think the IEAI Act is pretty much high level and technology agnostic. So it should cover any, I would say, non-disruptive technology change, since the definitions are very broad. And what it might come that the standards themselves are really weak for the implementation in this specific new case. But the law, in the spirit of the law with risk management and governance, will be covering, I assume, those new technology gaps. So this is my point of view too. So I don't see the time gap. But back to your question. And let's focus on Europe.
Yeah, please.
So we have the legal frame from the Commission, from the European, from the EU. And basically, as it is as level, it gives all the work, all the implementation work to a level below. Yeah. And here it comes into a standardization effort. Please, it asks the standardization committee to please, so the CNELEC, please convert these requirements into standards. And then those standardization committee is a mix of society, civil society, industry, and I would say a consulting company or whatever, who is professional on this topic and write those standards. So this is one aspect. The other aspect is going to be the accreditive bodies in the countries that we say, I acknowledge that TÜV or whoever in the market is accredited to judge, to audit, according to this law, according to this standard, based on the method they present in me. And there are many academia activities, which are either fully academia or mixed with industry and or civil society, where, and it was, I think, one of the previous discussion this afternoon, where risk framework, methodologies, testing methods are being developed. Yeah, thinking as well about Fraunhofer or whoever, they produce work which is still need to be wrapped up, agreed upon on the larger scale. Right now we have much more mini mushrooms, but we don't have the big mushroom. And so these are the main actors. I hope I answered your question. And for Germany specifically, we have the DIN roadmap. It will be mainly along the ISO topics.
Okay, so if you try to take an example, so let's say I'm a OEM, I'm a car manufacturer. I have a authority looking after the automotive branch, and I have a certification body, and the certification body is being accredited by some official body saying you can,
DKKS probably in Germany.
Yeah, DKKS. You can do AI audits for this OEM. And
yes, so automotive is probably not the right example, but let's assume it's a good example. Then yes, that's what it will happen. So notified body will be accredited for a specific standard and for the IEAI Act, and or either or both, and will be authorized to conduct recognized audit for this specific company for a specific context in a specific timeline.
Yeah. Okay. Now, Daniel, you from CERTI, you are going into this space and you're looking inside of organizations to the formal definition about AI governance within the organization. Now, governance was framed more as something that the organization does, but we know that when it comes to AI, it's about the individual use cases, about AI systems and AI lingo, so to speak. So from your observation, where is the interplay between AI governance in the organizational level, and how does it matter for the individual use case as it kind of advances through the machine learning lifecycle?
Yeah, it's first of all your line of defense when something goes wrong, right? Then you need to have a proper governance in place to minimize risk and so on and so forth. So that's kind of the main motivation, and I totally see that point. A lot of people come from let's develop high quality AI, high quality in a sense of you try to maximize your score or your precision accuracy or something like that. And not so many people at this stage think about the governance structure around those things, right? But it's your line of defense, as I already pointed out. So it's super important to have. At the same time, you will come to a point where you realize that you need AI governance also to clarify a couple of things. For example, what means fairness for a specific AI application? You were just mentioning fairness committees or something like that. So those are all part of the governance. So it is your backbone, and at the same time it defines basically what fairness means for your organization based on your strategy, on your company values and stuff like that. So therefore it's super important. And let me point out a couple of things just from practical or working in this field and actually doing it. I think you can separate not only cross industries. So I think there are already highly regulated industries, like for example the finance, the insurance industry, compared to the automotive industry and so on and so forth. But you can also see the differences in the size of the companies. If you're a big corporate, you are used to governance structures, right? You develop your AI governance system basically based on your already existing governance infrastructure. Now think about a small and medium-sized enterprise or even a startup. If you have just raised a couple of $1 million to build your product, and someone comes around the corner and says, hey, you have to build up an AI governance infrastructure, tell that your investors. And that's kind of a challenge for small and medium-sized enterprises and startups, but they need it. They need it also with respect to the European IEAI Act, and I think they also needed to build high quality AI systems in the future. So yeah, I just wanted to highlight that it's not one term or not one rule, one ring that rules them all, right? It depends a little bit on the size of the company, industry sector, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, I see. Because you kind of pointed towards that it's not an easy thing to do as well, and it requires a bit of an investment. Now, Sabine, you're working a lot with startups. I understand you looked at it not only from the legal perspective, but also more from an ethical side, more like a value-driven side. And to put it bluntly, why should companies care about implementing AI governance? Just to motivate it for us.
Great, now I got that question. Yeah, so yes, true. So we as a company, we scale startups around the globe and help them to enter other markets. So we do see them in their acceleration stage where they already have a few customers and it's starting to roll. And like you highlighted, obviously, oftentimes they just got some money, some VC funding, and it's really they're hitting the road. So I have to agree a bit, actually, that it's not the first thing they think about. So governance is not on top of their minds. And me being the one talking to them about AI and offering the AI programs, etc. Obviously, I'm like, do you want an AI ethics training? And they're like, yeah, can you help us with the scaling first? And I'm like, yes, we can do that. So we have, on the other side, I have to say that most solutions we see would not fall into the high risk or existential risk category. So I'm not sure if everyone's familiar with the AI Act, but you do have the 4 categories, and the highest ones, the highest risk ones, we hardly ever see them in our programs. So the ones that we do see is more application to practice. We have maybe a lot of predictive maintenance. So, and also when we see deep learning solutions, for example, mostly they are in the medtech or life sciences, which in itself is a heavily regulated industry. So in practice, I haven't really come across a use case where I thought it was really critical for them to have a governance structure in place already. Also because the team is more close-knit, and also startups, and that I think is a big thing to keep in mind. They're often heavily customer-driven. Whereas in a bigger company, like let's say a big corporation like VW, etc., you have a division of labor and also a division of responsibilities. Whereas in a startup, you're so close to the customer that you have a lot of feedback loops, and you are constantly testing your product. So I think in a startup, it's still easier to make sure you have higher quality, because you're still always in the performance testing of your product as you are developing it, and you have development customers, etc. So it's easier for them to ensure the governance aspect. But yeah, overall, we do give them training and insight into the topic, and we show them the standards, and obviously we make sure they know about the AI Act, but it's not the most pressing topic.
Yeah. Do you want to react to this, Philip? I thought you were thinking this now.
I just react between performance and quality, which is slightly different. I mean, performance is really a subset of quality. I mean, when you want to reach quality, you reach many other things than just the performance. And your startup obviously focus on performance more than on quality. But just
Depending on it.
Yep, probably mostly. Yeah.
Okay, so I understand. I mean, it's not top of mind for startups to go into this space. Now asking towards Daniel and Philippe, who are working much more with larger enterprises. The question is about, what is your observation with respect to actual quote-unquote business benefits, right? So that AI governance is not just an exercise like a tick box thing you just have to do and you move on. But can you describe what you observed in terms of companies gaining really proper benefits out of this, where they maybe didn't see this upfront, but later on said, oh, actually it was really worthwhile implementing a governance structure because it helped us doing this and this?
Yeah, maybe a couple of points here. So the first thing we see is first of all awareness short term, because I think not everybody is really aware what it actually means. So what does trustworthy AI means, or what are the different pillars here? I think we already talked about that. A lot of companies focus on performance and so on and so forth. So it's important to have the best possible model, or the most optimized model, or the model that needs the smallest size or something like that. If you really look into the topic of trustworthy AI and the different pillars, you have much more here. You have robustness, you have safety and security, you have fairness, which is maybe the most pressuring topic for a lot of people, because, or for a lot of especially large corporates, because of reputation and stuff like that. So they're really afraid of running into a problem in this area. So the first short-term awareness is in many cases that AI and responsible AI or trustworthy AI is more than pure performance. It's, as I already said, fairness, security. Is AI or is a human being basically the last line of making the final decision? So autonomy and control as the word here. So that's kind of the very first awareness we see. And then in the long term, I think automatically you end up in better products, because if you are aware of those topics, if you are aware of the different pillars, if you are aware of maybe also sustainability and so on and so forth, you end up in building better AI products. And just one thing, because I think, we talk about regulation and stuff like that, and regulation maybe per se triggers some negative vibe. From my perspective, it's not only a logical consequence that we regulate AI, but it's also necessary. If you look, for example, into established industries, like, for example, the automotive industry, the aerospace industry, the medical industry, I mean, why do we build cars at scale? Because it's regulated, because we have clear rules. Not everybody can just build a random car, put it on the streets, and that's it. You cannot just create a new drug and push it into the market, right? And I think we are now at a stage, the stage I've ever dreamed of, when basically AI is leaving the pure academic domain and becomes a mass system. So this automatically triggers, or this automatically requires clear guidance. So therefore, I'm really absolutely pro regulation of AI. if this is the right way we do it and so on and so forth might be worth a discussion, but I'm definitely pro regulation, and I think it's a logical consequence of mass scaling it.
Do you have anything to add?
First, thank you, because I really do agree and not much to add. So thank you, Daniel. I would just mention one small additional topic. You mentioned already safety, security, and ethics, or fairness, you call it, or sustainability. And your question were, why do people come to us or come to you or want to make governance? Usually they come from, they may have 3 reasons why they come: because compliance, I just want to be compliant, right? Tick the box. Or they want to show their customer, hey, I'm the good guy here in the room, right? And some of them, just what you mentioned the very last, they want to go at scale, right? And usually it's been a department, innovation department, or whatever department in their society, which is difficult to make it in 25 plants and 25 geographies, and happen tomorrow morning and again and again. And first, usually people come to us just to tick the box. And then they realize that ticking the box, you have to do quality to tick the box. And then being compliant is just a subproduct of quality, right? Like producing a car with quality. Okay, wait, it would be allowed to go on the road, but BMW or whoever is not making quality in his car just to be able to go on the road. You just don't make quality cars, to have the best cars, to have a competitive advantage. And so they start with just ticking the box and realize, yeah, it's not just, it's a competitive advantage. I'm going to be better, I'm going to be bigger, I'm going to be quicker, I'm going to be, if people leave my company, I can work again, I'm going to be at scale. So all these boxes are coming on top, and compliance is a subproduct.
Yeah. And just to link that back to the point with the startup, so it seems like maybe it doesn't matter when you're small, but if you want to scale and if you grow your organization, then certainly it seems to pay out.
Yeah, maybe just as a brief add-on, I mean, for all European companies, if you then add the additional cost, let's say, like you have to put in more other measures, you have to make sure you are compliant. In comparison to other continents, you will have a higher set of costs for compliance, right? So I think it's really important to then follow the logic of like do good and talk about it. And so, for example, if you look at Telecom really early on published a white paper on robust data, and tried to really make it their USP that their data was as best or as robust as possible. And I think that's something we will see with more and more companies to come, that they will really be transparent about what they are doing to make sure that it also pays off what they are investing.
Yeah.
So just one more use case, because you were mentioning the corporate and startup thing. So one use case we see now very, very often from a big corporate perspective is, so we internally separate AI buyers and AI makers. And for example, here in this case, take the startups as AI makers. So they create an AI solution and they want to sell it to a big corporate. One thing we see very often when it comes to certification and so on and so forth is that big corporates really have a hard time judging if a specific startup is building high quality AI. And therefore, they really ask for, hey, do you have a certificate or something like that? And I think we will see that more and more and more, that startups are really keen to get certified by us, by TÜV, whoever, and get a seal that they can showcase their high quality AI, and then it's much easier for the procurement departments in big corporates to select new suppliers and so on and so forth. So just one more use case when it comes to big corporates and buying AI actually.
Yeah, thanks for mentioning this. I think it kind of relates to this whole hype about AI, of course, and there's been this time of snake oil startups, right, making promises and then not keeping them. And I think having like a standard benchmark provides with them for an opportunity to say, okay, we actually meet that level, and in the spirit of a supply chain, they can much easier probably find customers. Now we've been talking for some time over here, but I would also like to open a little bit and see if there's any questions here at the moment about the things we spoke about. If you're ready, fantastic. Do we have a mic? How do we do this? Yeah.
Hi, Thanks for the really interesting panel. I was wondering, in the sort of debates about is regulation an advantage or a disadvantage, an argument that I always have in my mind that I haven't really heard anybody else talk about, so I'm not sure if it's valid, but the idea that if we in Europe regulate so closely, that's a competitive disadvantage because companies in the States don't have to do that. But at the same time, those companies won't be able to enter the European market. And if that's something that they want to do, then they also have to comply with the same regulation, which kind of, in my mind, sort of levels out that, oh, it's such a disadvantage with other countries. Could you say something about that? Thank you.
Shortly, I think these advantages will come that European company would have to do from the beginning. And maybe, let's say, US company would already be at the stage of scale up, already have a sustainable business model, proven business model, customers, recurring revenue, and say, okay, let's go Europe. And then get extra VCs, extra money to do this. So this would be where maybe you would have a shift in advantage. That's what I would say. But yes, basically the same. They would have the same rule to gain access to the European market.
I mean, actually, I can just share also like my concern in the sense that especially like critical industries are heavily regulated, right? Like let's say surveillance, for example, or bio data solutions, whatever. So I think that's when I say, oh, for those industries, I do see a disadvantage because also when we have GDPR and high data protection, if we talk like, let's say about surveillance solutions, it will be really hard from my point of view to come up with solutions that can keep up with, for example, Chinese technology in that sense. And if we ever want to deploy or use that, that is when, for me, the question arises like how we can have solutions that are European, but on the same level and as well trained and with the same technological advantage. Overall, I do agree. I think it's harder for like startups than for bigger corporations, but I think there will also be advantages because, as we said, I really do think that quality will be higher with those measures, and I think you will see more and more regulation coming up. Maybe not in a regulatory sense like we have in the EU, but you have so many standards coming up around the globe, and they are all very similar, actually.
Maybe just one more comment, if I may. I think I have a very, very similar opinion as you on this point. Just the IEAI per se does not make the EU technology landscape any better, because this is a regulation that holds for everybody, right? And everybody has to fulfill it, no matter where this company will come from. It makes the EU better when we try to use those regulations to build better AI products. Then we will become more competitive. But the law or the act itself will not change anything from my perspective. Only if you really take those findings to create better products.
Thank you. Sorry. Hi, I just have a question for you. It's not clear to me whether the certification that you offer is an ongoing process or a one-time thing. But actually, either way, but especially if it's a one-time thing, don't you fear that it becomes misleading because you have then certified something that goes into another use, possibly a dual use? It might drift over time. How can you offer a certification that says that this is trustworthy without taking that into consideration, or can you?
Yeah, it's an excellent question. So the point is, when you try to certify an AI, you cannot just do a certification like you do it with a car, right? You go to your workshop, and then you get basically this certification that is valid for 2 years. When it comes to AI, it's different. So you have to monitor it on a basically on a constant basis, because if you train with new data, if you retrain, if you change diver parameters and so on and so forth, you basically have a new model. And monitoring and stuff like that is part of the assessment. How do you do monitoring? Which KPIs do you monitor? which is actually an interesting question. So given your application, what are the right KPIs to monitor and stuff like that? So this is basically covered by a certification. We have a certification where we have kind of this kind of, you get a certificate and 2 years later or 1 year later, you can renew the certificate, but that only holds for the governance part. So you will most probably not change your governance processes on a weekly basis. So therefore, you set up your governance your governance processes. We come in, review them, do the certification, and then leave. But when it comes to the model itself, you have to monitor it on a constant basis. Absolutely.
Just content. It's always when you certify or when you audit something, it's with the intended use. With the intended use. So you have, as long as you stand in what you mentioned, that you don't know where it's going to be built in, but you have to keep in the intended use.
Okay, thank you. So regulation is one thing, and it covers only basically these high-risk use cases with specific requirements. It was already mentioned that in general, to achieve or show quality of AI systems, kind of certification benchmarking would be needed. At what level do you see that? For example, we have ISO 9001 for quality management in general, but I don't see that this is enough to ensure that the AI systems provide the right quality. So what level do you expect such a kind of voluntary certification would be from a requirements point of view?
There's going to be a lot of figures now. Be ready. So the mirroring standards to the ISO 9001 would be for AI, the ISO, and I hope I'm not wrong, so please don't take notes, 42001, yeah, for AI quality management. So this would give the frame, additional frame to manage quality for AI. Things we are in the possibly in high risk, but not only, we are in a risk management perspective from the compliance point of view, and as well from the quality point of view. You would have as well an ISO 23894, I'm not sure as well, for risk management for AI. And to name two. And then you would have a bunch of many standards depending on your needs, which describe standardized life cycle for data, standardized life cycle for the AI, and data requirements 5251. Help me, Daniel. No? ISO 5251 for data quality, and so on and so on. So you have existing, some, I would say 2/3 are still unpublished, 1/3 are already published. That's why I may have mentioned numbers which are not available for Mr. Everybody now, but we are at the top of the waves of standardization on those topics. I hope I answered the questions.
Okay. Maybe one more question now. We would then come back and open later. Maybe one in the back.
I'm a loud voice.
Yeah.
My name is Stephen Bay, and I'm a basketball player. Next session on AI effect on income. I just want to make a comment around how do we get companies to care. My company, the Pursuit Excellence, we work a lot with combining theory and practice. We actually regulate, work with some B2B technology companies that regulate their environment. Diversity practices is based on law. American companies go in and say, oh, it's just a responsible thing to do. They say, we'll do that here. And I was kind of getting sick of this really kind of division of being academics in America that care about a lot of things, but industry people just kind of go separate. And so my comment is just that I think everyone here is specifically within the panel around governance sharing so many great insights to be specifically about combining theory and practice. I would love to have more regular information sharing following these conferences and actually discuss afterwards. But wanted to kind of wrap that up and ask, what have you seen be successful? If you work with American companies, or if you work with companies who do that are a little bit more oriented towards profit, how do you get them to care about this?
A couple of things. So first of all, we never had a problem convincing someone because at the end of the day, you always have this argument of saying you build better or more high quality AI. The other thing is, and that was already mentioned, for example, your customers might trust you more. And I think European customers, maybe German customers especially, are very, very sensitive when it comes to seals and certifications and stuff like that. And I think this is a very good argument. On the other hand, I think you mentioned the US side of things. Just my view on that, I think it's interesting that the European Union is following a slightly different approach than the US. I think the European Union is trying to cover that starting from the European Union level and then letting that drop down basically into the different countries. And I think the US is approaching that a bit different. I think some states in the US, so it's basically per state. And I think some states are very, very advanced. If I look into the state of New York, for example, they have a very, 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 very detailed law when it comes, for example, to automatic processing of or using automation technology in human resource management and stuff like that. So they're very, very advanced on at that scale. But that's kind of just the opinion here. And so back to your question, I think the different argument I was just mentioning are basically holding for every company, no matter where the origins are.
Yeah, maybe just also a brief comment. I was working with a lot of multinational companies and consulting them like on C-level, etc., as an expert for compliance. And what we see oftentimes in Germany or in the German headquarters, people are really open to it. And also in Europe, what you also mentioned, I think that's also a bit the mentality maybe. And also that you have a lot of companies here that actually wrap their branding around their CSR, for example. And we do have a lot of CSR activities as well. And I think there has been a lot of tradition over the last, like, let's say, 20 years for business ethics, CSR, etc., playing into CDR, playing now into AI ethics. And I think oftentimes when it becomes complicated is when you have a global AI ethics rollout. So that's what I accompanied. And then it becomes really critical, because if we have as one element, like the legal side is not so much the problem, but for example, a values rollout, if you have fairness, justice, privacy, then you need a different interpretation for each subsidiary, for each continent, for each region, country, etc. So then you can only agree on a high level and would need a local interpretation. And then it becomes really hard for your product, because if you want to have a product go from one continent to the other, or if you have a global expansion for a tech solution, like what are you going to do? And that's where I was hinting when I said you need a structural element of ethics, not necessarily one ethical perspective, because the perspective can change, but you need to have it be a structural part of your solution that you weigh it in, whatever that content might be, right? So I think that's something you can agree on a corporate level, also in a multinational company. And then you can make it part of your branding and reputation to be like, hey, we do have that. It will always play a part, et cetera, right? And I think the second thing I would maybe just like to highlight briefly is that I think oftentimes it's not so much the solution, but once you put it into practice and you have a biased reality, and then things go south a bit, right? And that's a bit what you also often saw in the States. Like Compass is one software solution that was used in the juridical system, right? Where the training of the model was done right, but once you applied it to practice, it gave out biased information or biased decision support. And so I think it's more so the customer success maybe, or as a company, like which scope of responsibility are really taking, right? So I think it's really a lot of different elements to look at that you would have to as a company to do. So
maybe we pause a bit. I think we have something like 10 minutes left or so. So we should, and I would like to play a little game. The game is called Who Says No to What? Okay, so I believe governance is a lot about prohibiting or preventing non-compliances in the organization. So we have the law, we have standards, we want to go things smoothly in order. We do not want to have non-compliances. So occasionally someone will have to say no to something. And I think this is sort of where the rubber hits the ground, right? Because the companies are trying to think, okay, well, who actually then will say no to certain things. And I will present you now with a few scenarios, and whoever wants to take it first, please go ahead and try to think, well, should someone say no? If so, who will say no, and how are maybe they going to do this? And I have 3, 4 of them. Okay. So let's suppose we're developing an AI system. It's a high-risk system under the AI Act, and the team has implemented risk management. They are coming to this point where they look at the residual risk, and they kind of struggle to make a case whether this is acceptable or not. But because they already invested so much in the use case, they want to move on anyways.
Well, to me, it's a no, but it's going to be always a no, you know, no, it doesn't. But just beyond laughing, I mean, it's about significant risk. I think it's the way it's the word in the IEAI Act. And you mentioned compliance to the law, so it's a risk management, significant risk. So if you judge by, I mean, your company values, because you can have different risk affinity of your company, obviously, that you are below or above the threshold of acceptable risk, of significant risk, then this is exactly the definition of acceptable risk, to my mind.
But let's
And
suppose
who product owner or whatever governance ethical committee, whatever the structure is here to raise a red flag.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly the definition. I mean, you said residual risk. I think it's significant risk. Like, what exactly is the percentage? If it's higher, it's definitely a no, and you have to go back and make sure you have quality assessment or performance checks, etc. And if it's below that mark, then that's, I mean, I wouldn't say it's fine, depending on what high risk solution you're talking about, but still, then it's within the legal frame.
Yeah, not so much to add. Maybe just one thing. If you are unclear, then you might have. You should do that anyway. If you are unclear, then maybe you have done something wrong in the very first place by defining your measurements. Besides that, I'm just following what my colleagues just said.
So you define your measurements, you do the assessment. You need to have some kind of a threshold, and you need to have a role, I suppose. So the PO could have incentives, but so someone. Yeah. Okay.
There is a responsible metrics.
Yeah. Okay. Let's suppose we're a bit earlier in the machine learning lifecycle. There's a data scientist looking for data that can be used as training data for a given AI system. Now he or she discovers that there's some really nice data, including personal data. It was collected for some purpose unknown to the data scientist, and now the person wants to move on and just simply use that for training.
I think those cases are covered by the DSGVO already, so I think that's nothing new. I did a project like that, for example, back in my time at Volkswagen, when we created high-resolution climate maps from car data, basically down to the bin level, so to the vehicle identification number. And of course, you have to take measurements that you do a time shifting, that you do a geo-position shifting, that you cannot like basically trace that back to an individual customer. But I would say that's kind of a standard challenge covered by the DSGVO.
So you can proceed, and you would then go and like modify the data to make it useful, or pseudonymize it or something.
Yeah, exactly. Or mask it, or put noise into it. There are different techniques doing that.
Yeah.
Nothing to add. No.
Yeah.
And on top of it, with the repurposing check for, because when you have been preparing the first data set, you have been maybe checking for 10 bias, and one bias was not important at all for the second intended use, and you may have to check back for this bias which you have been checking for the first intended use. So in the repurposing.
So mapping the nature of the data towards the intended use, is it appropriate and useful for what you're trying to do?
Exactly.
And if it's not, then the data scientist, like who makes the call, is it appropriate?
Data scientist.
Let's suppose we're now really close to kind of placing a product on the market, right? So we have a really excited development team all the evaluations passed, everyone's really happy. Now there's a thing with documentation and someone says, we need to move fast, right? We can do the documentation later.
I would say that's just bad engineering practice. And no, I mean, if you have a development team, you might have not only data scientists in your team, you have software engineers in your team, you have DevOps in your team. And if you move a product to production, at some point the DevOps will need to take over. And if you tell a DevOps, hey, here's the code, but there's no documentation, you will not get a lot of applause for that. So I would just say it's bad engineering practice. And I would say that professional software development teams are not doing that. I think that was kind of happening in the beginnings, you know, when everything was living in Jupyter notebooks and stuff like that, and hey, we have this cool algorithm and stuff like that. But I would say nowadays, if you build a software product, you have different roles. You have, yeah, maybe the data scientist to some point, but you have software engineers, architects, those guys. If you have semi-talented ones, and I'm pretty sure all companies have really smart people in that team. They are automatically motivated doing that because at some point they have to take over that stuff.
But legally, it would only matter in high risk, basically. You wouldn't have to do it if you're in very low risk activity, even if it's a bad idea.
Cool. I think looking at the time, we're pretty much on it. We maybe have, again, time. I think there were a few hands for 2 or 3 questions before we then wrap up the session.
Thank you. One question to the TÜV Süd and Cert AI. How many companies really pass the certification? Because what I see in practice working with a lot of clients, big corporations, the reality is not ready for those certificates. So I would be interested in how many really pass and what happens if they don't pass. Thank you.
Okay, very quick answer. You are right. It's a challenge because why are companies doing that? Because there is pressure and they have to, and there is no pressure at the moment. So at the moment, it's a lot of voluntarily things are going on. I cannot talk about the exact numbers, apologies, but you're right. So it's very early in the market. But I think if you look into Q1 next year when the IEAI will hit, I'm pretty sure that we will see a huge jump here.
I did not take the opportunity to make, so we would not call it certification. From our point of view, it's only when we are accredited and we can give certification. So strongly speaking, none, because we cannot certificate. And to answer the very purpose of your question, the intended purpose is, I would say we are talking about a small 2 digits company, which are mostly in the awareness phase and mostly building internal knowledge. So making dry exercise, not necessarily for the sake of getting a stamp, but for the sake of understanding what it means to get a stamp.
Thank you for your great presentation and the discussion. And just one question. Organization need to find out the best practical one among various AI governance frameworks. But direct comparison is very difficult because background and also layers of various AI governance frameworks all different. Also, organization size different, especially SMEs. But I'd like to know what best practical crosswalks among them, method of crosswalk, because some part US list already done, but
Collect 2 questions.
Okay, thank you. The time I'd like to ask the time lag, the certification, and well, standards takes time to develop. And for example, we are now discussing how to regulate or how to govern the generative AI, but we don't have standards on it. It currently IEAI has published a terminology document recently, last year, but it doesn't define generative AI, large language model, or whatever. So you cannot certify anything. How can we tackle this from certification point of view? Thank you very much.
Yeah, no, I think that's fine probably for now, but I've seen many more hands up, and I think at least as far as I'm concerned, if you're sticking around as well. So if there's more questions that were unanswered, then please hit us.
I will be
on the panel,
outside
yeah.
for the not until tonight probably, but long enough.
Yeah.
Yes, as I mentioned, we are on the top of the wave of the certification efforts, and not all is solved. I mean, not all bias are easy to measure, not all metrics, not all measurement of all algorithm type are available. So what we are doing now is probably the easy jobs. Yeah, but the complex situation is, we're happy to pilot with whoever is interested, but I don't tell you that we are going to have a result at the end of the pilot now. That was for your question. And the other question.
Yeah, I mean, just for generative AI, I think there are a lot of things to look at, like specific elements. For example, I know that there are a lot of advancements being made in IP law, which more triggers like the outcome of Gen AI. Also, when it comes to the data set, like how do you maybe regulate the data input into the models, etc. So I think it'll be easiest if you would really break it down to very specific elements and look at them one after the other, because you do have global standards like, like IEEE is coming up. So there are associations dealing with the topic, but I think it's just such a broad element, generative AI, and so many like subparts to regulate that I don't think there will be a solution soon that will cover everything that happens when you use AI. Let's just put it that way.
Do you want to add? Okay.
Just two sentences to your question, if I understood the question correct. I understood that you were asking basically, how can you certify basically the governance side of things when governance structures are so different in different companies, if I understood the question correct. So yes, that's true, but there are still a couple of things that hold for everybody. For example, responsibilities and stuff like that, right? That is independent of, I mean, that might be different from company to company, but asking who is responsible for what is independent of your strategy, your company values and stuff like that. So there are a couple of constant elements, and there are a couple of elements in looking into the governance certification where you need to basically decide on a case-by-case basis.
Now, looking at the time, thanks for all the wonderful questions. Again, apologies that we couldn't take all of them. Please meet us in the break and later. And I want to conclude by thanking you for this very exciting discussion. Thank you.